William and David Smith, two brothers from Manchester, England, and also Jamaican landowners, had the idea of building a railway in Jamaica. This was instrumental as Manchester, England was home to the world's first intercity passenger railway. This was a journey Jamaica was hoping to embark on in the near future. In the early 1840s, the Smith brothers went to the Jamaican government and proposed the establishment of a railway company in Kingston, Jamaica. The idea was to transport agricultural goods between Kingston and the other inner cities. Jamaica was a third world country, still a third world country, but the Jamaica railway system was constructed with state of the art technology. It was similar to standards found in North America and Europe around that time. This was a win for a tiny island. The excitement was palpable among the locals. Welcome to my channel, everyone, your go-to channel for engaging discussions on diverse topics in the diaspora and beyond. Join me as I explore captivating stories and insights that is sure to connect us all. And today we are delving deep into the sad occurrence most people likely haven't heard of, the 1957 Kendal Train Crash in Jamaica. September 1st, 1957 was not just another day. It was a day full of excitement and anticipation. The Jamaican Railway was launching a train from Kingston to Montego Bay. The atmosphere was described as hopeful and captivating. One rider and future survivor, Miss Doral Dobson, she recalled that day vividly. She states, "I brought new everything because I wanted to go on the trip brand fresh. I was planning for it months ahead, and don't ask if I missed any expenses." Reading that comment just put into perspective the human element of it all. Hundreds boarded the train that day. Family, friends, children, all ready for a day of fellowship and fun. The trip to Montego Bay was a success by all accounts. People described a genuine festive vibe on board the train. There was even some reports about a priest conducting mass right there in train compartments. But it's on the train ride back that things took a sinister turn. After they got to Montego Bay, word has spread, as we Jamaican like to call it, news carry fast, about how fantastic the journey was. This prompted more tickets being sold for the return ride to Kingston. I saw in different publications that about 1,600 people squeezed into 12 wooden carriages for the journey back. Keep in mind now, these carriages were only built for a tenth of that amount. Each carriage had a maximum capacity of only carrying 80 people. This was one of the ingredients for the recipe of disaster. The overcrowding, pushed by everyone wanting to experience the joy of the journey, will soon become a major factor in this impending disaster. Because as the overloaded train rushed through the night, the conductor, Mr. Garnish Lurch, he sensed that something was wrong. And in his later recollection, he said he shouted to someone who's sitting behind him, an observer, Mr. Theophilus James. He said to Mr. James, "We dead now, we dead now." I prepared myself for death and made 3 blasts of the whistle to warn those behind me that something was wrong. And he was correct, because at approximately 11:10 p.m. near the town of Kendal in Manchester Parish, calamity struck. 8 of the 12 cars derailed, plunging off the tracks and into a gully. The wooden coaches just couldn't endure the impact. They smashed into fragments. Some were literally reduced to just matchwood. Imagine the chaos. Bodies scattered over the landscape among twisted metals and broken woods. You could even hear the cries of the injured piercing the darkness. One newspaper article, one stated that one of the coach on the train ripped to pieces with everything but the floor completely torn away, and even so, it continued to run for another quarter of a mile. If you put this into visual pictures, it's a horrifying image of the ferocity of the derailment. And in the midst of this tragedy, we are adding another layer of sorrow to this because looters decided to take advantage of this catastrophe. They started wandering among the dead and dying. They started searching for anything that they could steal. Again, not a pleasant one, but another harsh reminder of the human element in the midst of this tragedy. Because even in the moments of deep grief, darkness seems to always find a foothold. The official death toll was recorded at about 187, with over 700 injured, but others feel the actual figure was way higher. The hospitals, as you can imagine, in the adjacent towns were utterly swamped. There was a desperate need for blood donations and volunteers. This need resonated across the island. And what I think was another heartbreaking part of this ordeal was having to identify the dead bodies. It was a gloomy and tough undertaking because remember, guys, many of these victims were mutilated beyond recognition. The overwhelming extent of the disaster led to the establishment of a mass grave at the crash site, an enduring tribute to the devastation. On Friday, September 8th, the nation commemorated a national day of sorrow, flags flown at half-mast, condolences flooding in from around the world. The Kendal disaster had become a national tragedy, engraving a scar on Jamaica's history. But while the nation mourned, concerns arose. People needed answers. What caused this terrible crash? Was it merely a mechanical breakdown? Was it an accident? Was there something more sinister at play? And to get to the bottom of everything, the Jamaican government launched an emergency probe, the Railway Commission of Probe. Their mission was to unearth the truth and place blame. What they uncovered was a complicated network of contributory factors. There was first the mechanical failure. There was also neglect, and most, but not so surprisingly, the severe overpopulation of the train. The inquiry discovered that the immediate cause of the derailment was a closed brake cock. Now, for those of us in experience with train mechanics, like most of us, a closed brake cock stops air from reaching the brakes, thereby rendering them unusable. So think of it this way. It's a valve that controls air pressure in the train braking system. In your car, if you try to stop your car without functional brakes, it is a formula for disaster. So that was the first issue with the derailment. The probe didn't stop there though. They probed deeper. They analyzed the train's maintenance records. They look at the activities of the people responsible for the upkeep of the train maintenance records. And what they revealed was a pattern of neglect inside the Jamaican administration. Railway upkeep was inadequate. Safety checks seem to have been either neglected or just totally fabricated. In the Navy, we call that gun decking. And the inquiry also pointed the finger at acting general manager Mr. Magnus. Now, Mr. Magnus, he did catch some heat from this. And if they are correct, it was all warranted. The railway probe stated that he lacked, Mr. Magnus now, he lacked the integrity which one must expect of an officer assuming that position. It showed a society where expediency seemingly triumphed over safety. Putting this into simpler terms, think moral corruption, which is still happening today. All in all, they concluded that the main reason for the tragedy was the role of overcrowding, and this was a big factor in the compounding disaster scale. Remember, the train was carrying nearly 1,600 people, more than double its intended capacity. It seemed that amidst the excitement of the day, the delight of the journey, safety standards were neglected and far too many tickets were sold. This disdain for safety, coupled with the train's poor condition and the incompetence of those responsible for the upkeep, Mr. Magnus, it formed a perfect storm, a disaster waiting to happen, a disaster that did happen, the Kendal Crash. Thank you everyone for listening. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know if you heard about the Kendal Train Crash and what are your thoughts on this. See you in the next one.